Hey, sports fans, it's world champion handicapper Mike North. Punch this number in your phone right now. If you're driving, pull over. 1-800-808-3419, 1-800-808-3419 for a free pick and info for the premier handicapping site in the country, VegasScoresAndOdds.com. It's the only site you'll ever need with expert handicappers like John Anthony, Denny Macklin, Tony Sacco, Ray Monahan, yours truly, and many more. Check out the homepage of VegasScoresAndOdds.com for a tote board with your buddy. Follow Vegas Scores and Odds on Twitter and dial up 1-800-808-3419. It's 1-800-808-3419, 1-800-808-3419, or go to VegasScoresAndOdds.com.
The following program is suitable for all ages.
Buffone. A certain magic will always linger with the very name. It speaks of courage and fervor and the world's most brutal game. 55, worn by Doug Buffone, a Chicago Bear through and through. He demanded excellence of himself and anyone wearing navy blue.
You tell me what's going on. This is moronic. We're going to get our whipped all the way down the line. I want somebody to get kicked in the and get out there and play. You're getting paid to play this game. And play it right. I don't mind you getting beat. I got my whipped many times. But I tell you, I took somebody down with me. You are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
Football fans, this is Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55, a fast-paced approach to Chicago Bears football analysis. I'm your host, John Buffone. I'm coming to you live on Tuesday night, October 1st on our Mixlr.com channel. Every week we take an in-depth dive on the Bears' upcoming opponent. Here to help with that analysis is your boy Q, host of the Locked On Raiders podcast. He's going to join us in just a bit, but first I want to welcome my producer and moderator, Alyssa Barbieri. Alyssa, I'm anxious to talk to our guest and share my thoughts, but I'm equally eager to hear your thoughts on the 16-9 Bears victory over the Vikings on Sunday. My question to you is, what were your expectations just before the game when we learned about Roquan Smith's absence along with the other players missing because of injury? What were your expectations going into it, and how did you feel after the victory?
So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned, especially after hearing that Roquan was a last-minute scratch, but I feel like I had enough confidence in the depth on the defensive line, but I really wasn't expecting them to ball out as hard as they did, so kudos to them. But it wasn't just on defense, too, also. Obviously, Chase Daniel coming in and filling in for Trubisky, who went down with that left shoulder injury, but also Javon Wims kind of stepping up and filling in for Taylor Gabriel there. In a weird way, because this game felt very weird with all of the injuries but it kind of also felt like a blessing, kind of, as it kind of showed that this team can win even without its starters and without a starting quarterback. This defense is just that good. Is it possible they're even better than last year?
The stats would show that. It was, you're right. Overall, it was kind of a weird yet rewarding kind of matchup and a victory for the Bears. It was just wild with all the different storylines going on, but hell of a team win.
Absolutely. I feel like, especially going into this Raiders game and then having that bye and going to be able to rest everyone, get everyone healthy. I feel like, after that first win, it was, weren't feeling so good. But after this win against the Vikings, that good team win, I feel like there's a lot of confidence for this team heading in to week 5.
We're going to see if they can keep it rolling. Alyssa, I want you to set the table for our listeners by telling them what's ahead.
Indeed. So before we bring in our guest, who will provide us in-depth information on the 2019 Raiders, we will do our B55 segment and then do another one after our guest interview. Those B55s are when I ask John 5 questions, and for each of them, he has 55 seconds to respond. That's John's way of dedicating this show to Doug Buffone, his uncle, who played 15 seasons for the Chicago Bears and wore number 55. Now, along the way, those of you joining us live, please post your comments and questions in the chat room, and I will try to work them into the show. So, John, let's get the first 5 in the books, and then we'll bring in our guest.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I shared my thoughts on how I felt prior to the game and afterwards. Now I want to hear your thoughts. You've got 55 seconds, and the clock starts now.
I got to be honest, I lowered my expectations a little bit. I mean, no Akeem Hicks, no Nichols, and then no Roquan. Like, damn, that would cripple most teams. And then Mitch goes down and enter the Chase Daniel experience, or Chase Daniels if you're a well-paid national sports analyst on any platform across the country. But when the Bears won the game, I felt relieved, excited, and a bit vindicated. All offseason and through the first couple games, critics were saying that the Bears couldn't possibly keep up this defensive pace from last year. They won't be able to win the division again because they won't stay as healthy as they were last year. This game proved how good the Bears actually are from top to bottom. They aren't a top-heavy team that relies on everyone being healthy. 3 of their best players plus their starting quarterback were out, and they still beat the Vikings. This is so encouraging to Bears fans because I think what it does is prove that the Bears have a chance to win no matter who they're playing, no matter who is hurt, and that's an incredible feeling to have a team that deep. So I started off with modest expectations, but finished with a ton of confidence in this team.
And that defense, regression? What regression?
No regression whatsoever. Go on, Pagano, do your thing.
So Chase Daniel played like he knows this offense the same way you know the Queensberry rules. For those of you who don't know, John is a boxer in training. So I think it's safe to say that we all know that pound for pound, Mitch is the better quarterback. But don't pull any punches here, John. Tell me, is it possible that Chase Daniel did a better job against the Vikings than Mitch Trubisky would have done, given what we've seen of Mitch in the first 3 games? 55 seconds, go.
Oh, man, a Queensberry Rules reference. I love it. Well, he certainly knows the system. I think he scanned the field well and got a lot of players involved, something we were yearning for Mitch to do. In the very short term, yeah, he looked a little sharper than Trubisky. But remember when everybody was crushing Chase Daniel in the preseason, saying he's a bum and Pace should go get a better backup? You can go back to the archives. We talked about that on this show. And I wasn't exactly a Chase Daniel truther, but I talked a lot about his experience in this offense and as it's something that will go a long way rather than getting someone off the street and having them try to learn this intricate offense on the fly. It's big to have him in the quarterback room for Trubisky, and it's big for when he has to come in because, as we saw, basically the entire playbook is still in play with Chase Daniel in there. So it's nice to have someone come in who has played this style of offense in Kansas City and in Philadelphia, and although he might not be a superb NFL quarterback and he has some issues moving up in the pocket, mentally he's pretty competent, especially in this offense.
And I feel like he's a solid quarterback, that can fill in for Trubisky. Hopefully he's not out too long, but I still have thoughts of that Giants game last year. I was at that game and that kind of sits in the back of my head a little bit. Like when teams have a chance to game plan for him, how is it going to go?
Oh yeah, I'm not overly excited about it, but I mean it's something that they can win in spite of it.
And this defense, I mean, they're golden.
Exactly.
So speaking of that defense, no Akeem Hicks, no Roquan Smith, no hope for stopping Dalvin Cook. At least that's what a lot of people were expressing on social media. Take the next 55 seconds to share with your fans what the Bears did on defense to contain the NFL's leading rusher. Go.
I think they let their backups do exactly what the starters do. Roy Robertson-Harris had a freaking game. What a disruptor, man. Nick Williams made his presence known with 2 sacks. Kevin Pierre-Louis put his name on the game, for gosh sakes. I mean, they were blowing up the Vikings line all day. Once Cook got the ball, they swarmed. Different names on the back of the jerseys, but the same dominant result. Dalvin Cook, getting mentioned in the, quote, best in the league category going into this game, had 14 carries for 35 yards. I don't know where some of these national sports folks get the inclination that Dalvin Cook was just going to have his way with the Bears defense. Maybe we live in an age where people just don't expect defenses to play up to the level of good offenses, so a great offense will always be better than a great defense, but that's bull. That dude was bottled up all day long, and the $84 million man couldn't do squat either. I said it last week, give me this Bears defense against absolutely anybody. They are a nightmare to play. I don't care what offense you bring against them. They're going to play well.
I still have that image of Nick Kwiatkowski just running over Dalvin Cook on the way to Kirk Cousins. I mean, that's what a defense.
It was literally an explosion. It was beautiful.
So, John, there were a lot of players who stepped up in this win over the Vikings. Lots of players. Take the next 55 seconds to acknowledge some of the players we've yet to highlight. I'll start the clock when you start to talk.
Well, I'm going to talk about that guy we just mentioned. How about Nick Kwiatkowski? This is a guy that has taken a lot of crap throughout the years, occasionally from myself. Plenty of jabs have come his way during his time in Chicago. He doesn't have the speed to play linebacker. He couldn't cover a peg-legged receiver. I mean, the dude comes in, racks up 8 tackles, a sack, and during one play, like we talked about, made Dalvin Cook's life flash before his eyes. He absolutely blew him up. Really solid game out of Kwiatkowski. I feel like we don't talk about Khalil Mack a lot because his dominance is just assumed. We assumed he's always going to get a forced fumble. We assume he's going to terrorize the quarterback. But honestly, what a game changer this guy is. I know we'll probably get into this subject a little bit more with our guest later tonight, but it's almost like we gloss over Mack's phenomenal performances because phenomenal has become the norm. So I do want to mention him, obviously, but we can shout out Javon Wims. He ran some crispy routes using his frame. He brought down 4 big catches for 56 yards. Javon Wims had a nice game.
I really agree. I feel like we do kind of forget to talk about Khalil Mack because his play kind of speaks for itself, but he's out there every play just affecting the play every time. We
just take it for granted. I mean, we've already got that. It hasn't even been 2 years. We're taking it for granted already.
So, John, was there something that you learned about this team after this win? Something that perhaps you didn't know about this collection of players? And if there's not, then just go ahead and take the next 55 seconds to tell us what is it about this team that you want your listeners to know? Take your 55 seconds and then bring in your guest. Go.
All right, I've already talked about this, but I learned that this isn't just a collection of 22 really good starters. I've gained a newfound respect for Ryan Pace. He's constructed a team that can handle injuries. The defense is just about as deep as a team can be. Maybe you can't say the same for a few positions on the offensive side of the ball, but it's a work in progress. I mentioned names tonight that we didn't even think would see the field, and they made a big impact on Sunday's game. Williams, Kwiatkowski, Pierre Lewis, Sherrick McManus with a big special teams tackle, Patty O'Donnell having maybe the best season of his career at the punting position. I know I'm really going down the rabbit hole here when I start praising the punter, but this was a great team win. A team that rallied around a backup quarterback who played really well in his own right, by the way. Things looked kind of rocky in the first 2 weeks, but we're getting back into that zone where it doesn't just feel like the Bears are a playoff team, but it feels like they can win the division. Even though they lost to Green Bay, the Packers certainly look beatable. The same obviously applies to the Vikings, and we'll learn more about the Lions down the road, but we're getting back into that confidence level. With that, I'd like to welcome in my guest tonight, your boy Q, host of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Q, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well, man. Thanks for having me on the show. And after hearing that, those questions that you just answered, I feel like I know a whole lot more about the Chicago Bears. So very intrigued by tonight, just the conversation, and then very intrigued by the game that's going to be played on Sunday in London.
Absolutely. We try to get as much information packed into 55 seconds as possible, but now is the time where you come in and you let us know about the Raiders. I have to start with the year-long suspension of linebacker Vontaze Burfict because of that brutal blow to the head of Colts tight end Jack Doyle. He leaves as the team's current 4th leading tackler. What does his exit mean for the team on and off the field? And if you could follow up, do you think that Vontaze Burfict has played his last game as a Raider?
I'm not sure if he's played his last game as a Raider. I'll just answer question number 2 first, just because, Paul Guenther and him have that real good relationship, and it depends on how this appeal goes. This appeal, he's already filed the appeal. I think that it's probably going to get reduced. I understand if it doesn't, and I understand why. His rap sheet is so long that, a felon couldn't ask for any time out of jail if they had this kind of rap sheet. It's just unbelievable. You know who Vontaze Burfict is when you sign him, and the Raiders knew what chance they were taking when they grabbed him, but he is a key cog in that Paul Guenther defense because he understands it. He understands it way better than any of the Raiders currently do, the current guys that are on the roster, because he played in it for so long in Cincinnati with Paul Guenther, and so they have a really good relationship. He was actually looked to be a leader, and it's funny, I actually caught myself for a few weeks saying, wow, Vontaze Burfict is really a leader on this defense. And it's strange for me to use the L word and Vontaze Burfict in the same sentence, but I did because he was really, he was telling these guys how to line up, where to line up. He was checking down in different plays and was actually giving them a chance to succeed in this defense. And so with him being gone, it's going to be a really big blow to that defense. Is immediately when he got kicked out of the game on Sunday, the Colts started having success on the ground and started running the ball really well. And I thought, it's going to be a long day if they can get that run game going. Luckily, They were able to rebound. Tahir Whitehead took over the middle linebacker position, put that green dot on the back of his helmet, and started calling out the plays. And he's a veteran in the league, so you're thinking that, okay, maybe he could take that role. Maybe he actually worked alongside Vontaze Burfict long enough to know exactly what he needs to do in what situation. When he sees something, he can react to it quickly instead of having to think about it, because we all know a thinking man is a slow man. So that's the challenge that the Raiders face without Vontaze Burfict. But the challenge that they face when they signed him is trying to keep him on the field, because if you go back and look, his history is he's not available very often for his team. And that was the biggest issue for me when they signed him. I didn't like it because of the availability. I didn't really necessarily care about the dirty player, because I get it. I mean, he's just one of those dudes. That's just who he is. But the fact is, he gets suspended a lot. He gets injured a lot. He got busted for PEDs. I mean, there's every kind of rap sheet on, or a rap on his rap sheet is bad. And so I was worried about that, concerned about that. And now it comes to fruition where, well, he made it 3 games in about a quarter.
Yeah, he was an inherent risk when they brought him in, and kind of it already flipped on him about a quarter away through the season. Let's talk about the Raiders as a whole. 2-2 after the first quarter of this season. They beat the Broncos in the opener, and then on Sunday they handled the Colts on the road. In between those victories, they took losses to Kansas City and Minnesota. Before we delve into particular position areas, what's your overall assessment of this team after 4 games?
You know, I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of Raider Nation is really flipping out, and they're really concerned by the way that they lost those 2 games, the game to Kansas City and the game to Minnesota. And, you know, John Gruden is the worst head coach ever. Mark Davis is the worst owner ever, and so on and so forth. You know, it's just like they want to burn it down because, well, they lost 2 games to 2 really good teams. And the way they lost, I'm not going to lie to you. It was bad. It was not a way that they should have lost a game. They didn't look very competitive. Kansas City beat them really based off the second quarter of the game alone. And then Minnesota, it seems like they never had a chance. Like they never got off the bus in Minnesota, and they just took that L. But I think so far in 2019, the outlook of the team is a lot better than what it was in 2018. They still, similar to what they did in 2018, lost their best player 1 week before the regular season started. Obviously, 2018, you know very well, they lost Khalil Mack to the Bears. 2019, they lose Antonio Brown to Antonio Brown. And it's just, you know, it's one of those situations. It's something that's tough to overcome. But so far this year, they've been able to come out and win 2 games by the end of the 4th game, where they didn't win their second game. They won their first game in week 4 in 2018 against the Browns in overtime, and they didn't win their second game until week 9? Or no, week 11, excuse me. It was November 18th. It was week 11. They finally won their second game of the regular season. So to have 2 wins after 4 games is a very, very big step up, or step in the right direction compared to what it was in 2018.
You know, you're talking about some Raiders fans maybe not loving John Gruden. Here in Chicago, though, there's a special kind of love for John Gruden. Fans, they're grateful that he and the Raider organization pulled the trigger on the trade for draft picks, which yielded Khalil Mack to the Bears. Now, Mack finished last season with 12.5 sacks, 6 forced fumbles. That's actually 1 half fewer sack and 1 more forced fumble than the entire Raiders team last year, but I digress. After the Bears win, Mack said he wasn't going to lie. He's looking forward to the game against his old team. About 13 months after that deal, what's the feeling in Raiders Nation about the trade heading into Week 5 against Mack and the Bears?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. Khalil Mack is that girl that got away. You know what I mean? Straight up. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. Khalil Mack is that girl that got away, and no matter what the Raiders ever do, no matter how many games they win, if they win championships, whatever happens in the long run, there will always be that hole that was left by Khalil Mack leaving on September 1st, 2018. We all remember exactly where we were when we got the news, when the notification came on the phone. I had a very rough Saturday. I lie about that. It was a bad day. Everyone who was around me that tried to give me a joke or a jab, like one guy at the radio station said, "Hey, Q, how's your day going today?" And I'm like, really? We're going there now? This is the conversation we're having right now. How's my day going? You know how my day is going. It's going bad, you know? And so anyway, it was a rough day, man. September 1st is a real bad day in Raider history. Every time it comes around, you just feel some kind of way. This year when it came around, I thought, man, I remember exactly where I was, what I was doing. It's just terrible, you know? And so no matter how this whole thing shakes out and how this experiment works, and no matter what these draft picks turn into, I know Josh Jacobs technically is the guy that was basically drafted in Khalil Mack's place. They used the pick from the Bears at number 24 overall and got Josh Jacobs, and I like him a lot. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. But ultimately, when you see that Khalil Mack's not there and you see what he's doing in Chicago, not that I needed to see what he was going to do because I knew what he was going to do, you just be like, man, that's the one that got away. And then unfortunately, you know, you run into him around town like you would like some chick. You run into her and you're like, damn it. That guy that you're with is not that good, even though you guys are super happy together. You should still be with me. That's who Khalil Mack is.
What a great analogy and the breakdown of the feeling of Khalil Mack in Raiders Nation. While we're on the issues of pass rushing, the Raiders this year are averaging about 1 sack per game, and they are 30th in the league in quarterback hits. Not great. What's going on with the team's pass rushers? Can you break down who they are for us and why the numbers aren't quite there yet?
Well, they're just not that good. I mean, let's just be honest about it. They're just not that good at getting to the quarterback. The guys that are there getting after him, most of them are young guys. They drafted Cleve Farrell, number 4, out of Clemson, to be that guy, but he's more of a run stuffer than he is a pass rusher. I think he's going to be a good pro, but he's not Khalil Mack. And look, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're a defensive end and you get after the pass rusher, you're always going to be compared to that guy. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter. And he's so stinking good that nobody's really going to be able to replace him. They have Arden Key. They picked him up in 2018 in the 3rd round out of LSU, and I think he has 1 career sack, maybe 2, but he's got one move. He's got one tool on his tool belt, and that's a speed move. And in the NFL, you're going to need more tricks to the trade than that to get to the quarterback consistently. So he's still trying to work things out. Actually, it's funny, man. Benson Mayowa is the Raiders' leading rusher or pass rusher right now with 3.5 sacks, which isn't a whole lot, but it's 3.5 and it's leading the team. And he was a healthy scratch against the Colts. So I mean, a healthy scratch, and he leads the team in sacks. But they got Max Crosby out there. He's a young dude, 4th round pick out of Eastern Michigan. They like his energy. They like what he brings in practice. He is a fun dude to watch. He's a motor that doesn't stop. But yet he doesn't have any sacks yet on the season either. Now he does have a forced fumble. He has made some nice plays. He's gotten in the backfield a few times. Like, he's a disruptor. Don't get me wrong. But they made Benson Mayowa, who leads the team in sacks, a healthy scratch so they can get Max Crosby on the field more and see what he has more. But unfortunately for the team, they're not picking up any sacks. So it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You know, it's like you want to get the young guys some burn because your team is now the 8th youngest team in the league. But you also at the same time want to get to the quarterback. And right now the guy that gets to the quarterback is the oldest dude on the roster. And that's just what it is.
We live in interesting times when your sack leader is a healthy scratch. We are talking to your boy Q, host of the Locked On Raiders podcast. I want to switch sides of the ball now. Derek Carr had x-rays on his lower leg, which he injured early against the Colts. Although he did stick it out for the remainder of the game, he seems to be a guy that has a very high threshold for pain. He's had some big injuries in his career, a broken fibula in 2016, a fracture in his back in 2017. Do you know anything about this injury? Is there any possibility the Bears could get a crack at their former long-necked quarterback in Mike Glennon?
I really don't think so. I haven't heard what the results of the x-rays were. I know he had them on Sunday, and I think it was just precautionary because he did play the rest of the game, and he looked like he was fine. I know the team is in London already, and so I think that he's going to be just fine. I hope that the Bears don't get an opportunity to see their long neck quarterback or their former long neck quarterback because he's awful. I'm telling you. If
you don't have to tell us that, we know that.
If the Raiders have to go to any of their backups, then they're already in trouble. But they'll really be in trouble if that's the case because they're just not very good. So the Raiders have to protect Derek Carr. They have to make sure he stays upright, gives him at least somewhat opportunity to get the ball out of his hand. Because if not, there's going to be some dogs coming after him on Sunday, and one of those dogs leading the charge will be 52, the former stud of the Raiders, who is now a stud for the Bears.
You're getting me all excited here, Q. Can you give us a rundown on Carr's performance thus far in 2019? Is this maybe the best he's looked since he finished 3rd in the MVP voting back in 2016?
I think he's looked pretty good. He's had his moments. You know, his week 1 performance against the Broncos was really, really good. He looked like he was on point. The game against the Chiefs, I feel like that game, it just really got away from the Raiders really quickly in that second quarter, and nobody looked good. So there was a lot of bad return from Raider fans on him, and really the fan base is so split on Derek Carr. Some love him and think he's going to be the guy, and some just look at him like he's just a guy. And so, you know, I know a lot of Bear fans probably feel the same way about Mitchell Trubisky. They're not sold on him either. That's just kind of the world we live in. If you're not winning Super Bowls, you're not anything. You know, I mean, it's just what it is. And Derek Carr, he's like I said, he's had his moments. I feel like he understands John Gruden's offense, but sometimes I think he tries to do too much. Sometimes I think he tries to get either too creative or tries to be too much like the head coach and tries to say, okay, I'm going to think a step ahead like coach would do instead of just running the play. There's a couple times that you've actually seen when the camera goes to John Gruden, you'll see him mouth the words, just run the play instead of Derek Carr getting a little bit too creative. So I think sometimes he gets in his own head, and and then when he gets pressure on him and he starts really getting hit early in the game, then he starts getting a little bit of happy feet and get a little shaky in the pocket, and then that's when bad things happen. So the jury's still on Derek Carr. This year is going to be a really big one for him. He's got to improve. He's got to show that he can lead this team, be the franchise quarterback moving forward. He bought a house. Apparently, he's having it built next to John Gruden in Vegas, and that's great. But if you're not there to lead the team, it's not going to matter where you live, because John Gruden will ship you out if he's not getting what he wants from you.
Oh, man. One of those guys that could take the pressure off of Carr would be Josh Jacobs, the running back. We talked a little bit about him before. He had 17 carries for 79 yards and 29 receiving yards against the Colts. You already told us that you feel pretty confident in him. You like where he's trending. Is that kind of the same confidence level within the Raiders organization? They're pretty sold on this kid.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They've liked him ever since the national championship game against Clemson. And the thing about it, man, Josh Jacobs wasn't even a starter at Alabama, and that's the beauty of it. And a lot of people told me leading up to the draft, because I was there, and I kept saying, I want them to grab Josh Jacobs. I think he'll be a stud for years to come. And everyone said, well, Alabama running back, how often do they really pan out in the league? And I said, yeah, that's true, but this dude doesn't really have any wear and tear on his tires, which is very rare for a running back coming out of Alabama, because he wasn't a starter. And also he could do multiple things. He could run, he could block, and he could pass catch. And so that's a guy that, to me, sounds like an ideal fit in a John Gruden West Coast offense, right? He could do everything. He could stay on the field for three downs. And so that's what I really like about him. He has breakaway speed, but he's also tough and can run in between the tackles, which is what you're seeing so far from him. You saw a lot of that on Sunday against the Colts. My biggest issue with Josh Jacobs, and I think a lot of the fan base, is that John Gruden and the offense hasn't used him enough. They used him a lot week 1 against Denver, come out with a win. They didn't use him very much against Kansas City. He only carried the ball, I think, 12 times. They lost that game. And then in week 3 against the Vikings, he only carried the ball 10 times. Lost that game. And then he carries the ball 17 times, like you mentioned, against the Colts. They take a win. So what do? You feed him the rock. You're not a high-flying offense. You're not Kansas City. You're not going to throw the ball around for 500 yards and have a guy making no-look passes. I mean, you're just not that team. What you are is a ball control team. You want to hold the rock as long as possible. You want to have those long sustained drives. You want to pound it. You want to run it, and then take your shot when you have the ability. That's who John Gruden is. So stick to the script and be who you're going to be. If you're going to run your offense, run it to the fullest extent of it. Don't half-ass it, but they do. And so that's what frustrates me, and that's what frustrates Raider fans, is when they don't stick to the script. They get off script because they think that, it's panic time. Instead of panicking, just run your offense, feed the young pup, let him get his run, and go from there and see, let the chips fall where they may after that.
Q, I'm sure you are absolutely tired of talking about Antonio Brown, so I'm not really going to go too much into him specifically. However, with him not there, he was expected to be a big part of the passing game. What's the state of the Raiders receiving core without Antonio Brown? Tyrell Williams really stepping up big, yeah?
Yeah, he's stepping up in a major way. He has 4 touchdowns in the first 4 games of the season. That's big time for the Raiders right there. But the problem is Tyrell Williams, in my opinion, is not a number 1 wide receiver. He's a number 2. He's a really good compliment. I think if Antonio Brown was there, the talent Antonio Brown was there, I think Tyrell Williams would be an absolute stud, because you got to pick your poison. You know what I mean? And so Tyrell Williams is doing the best he can right now. He's not polished. He's not 100% yet. He still drops the ball every once in a while on some plays that he should really make. He's not that guy yet. And he's trying to mold himself into that number 1 position, because all of a sudden he was pushed into that role when AB went all the way AB on the Raiders. I don't even know what to describe it except for going all the way AB. It's like its own kind of noun or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like there's a person, place, and a thing, and then there's AB. You know what I mean? It's really nuts. But anyway, it was really bad, because I thought at first that John Gruden and company were really, really smart, and they didn't build the offense around Antonio Brown, and they just thought that he was going to be an extra weapon. But apparently, according to him, the offense really sputtered out of the gates because they didn't have Antonio Brown, and he had so much that he had invested as far as plays and what he wanted to run and how he wanted to use Antonio Brown. It would make everybody else that much better. So he said, according to Gruden, it took a long time to get his offense going the way he wanted it to go, because he had to adjust without Antonio Brown there. Well, he wasn't there all the training camp. He wasn't there throughout the preseason. So I thought, okay, they're already kind of preparing themselves for life without AB. Apparently, I was wrong. So we'll see where we are, as far as John Gruden and company, as far as if they got that offense up to speed by week 5 against a very stingy Bears defense. So good luck with that. But it'll be remain to be seen how they shake this thing out and how they keep evolving this offense with Tyrell Williams being the number one wide receiver. And then you use your tight end, Darren Waller, who's been a pleasant surprise, a real stud for the Raiders so far. So see how you continue to use him.
Speaking of free agent acquisitions, after a rough start to the season, some were wondering if the Raiders wasted a free agent signing on LaMarcus Joyner, but he did have an impressive performance against the Colts where he's kind of all over the field, breaking up passes, nearly nabbing an interception. Is this the LaMarcus Joyner the Raiders have been waiting for? Also, as a whole, can you break down Oakland's secondary?
Yeah, he's a Swiss Army knife. He really is. I like LaMarcus Joyner a lot. I didn't understand why he wasn't on the field very much against Minnesota. I know that John Gruden had a reason for it, but I'm not buying it. I mean, defensive players make defensive plays. It's simple as that. If you got a guy that can make plays, you put him on the field and you figure it out. And so they didn't use him very much against Minnesota, used him a lot more against Indianapolis in many different positions, like you just said. And that really worked out into a major way. And I think he could be an X factor. He really can. He can go up against a tight end. He can be a safety. He can play on the outside. I mean, he could do so many things. He can come up to the line of scrimmage and make a tackle in the backfield. I mean, there's so many different things this dude could do. He's got to be on the field to be able to make that happen. With that being said, talking about the secondary, the back end is a little bit shaky. You know, you have Carl Joseph out there. He's in his 5th year of his contract. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. He was a first-round pick. In my opinion, he's good, but he's not great. And I think he had his best game as a Raider last week against the Colts. Some have disagreed with me on that, but that's fine. That's just my opinion. I think Carl Joseph is good. I don't think he's great, but he did play a really good game on Sunday against the Colts. And then on the other side, there was Jonathan Abram, the rookie out of Mississippi State. He hurt himself in the very first game of the season against the Broncos, so he's out. And for some reason, they had Curtis Riley in there, the veteran from the Giants. They signed him from the Giants as a free agent, and he stinks. He absolutely stinks. I don't understand what in the world they were thinking about putting him out there. His burn rate was worse than like my burn rate when I'm in the kitchen and I can't cook. You know what I mean? And like he's awful. He gets burned all the time. And so they pulled him out, and Eric Harris, he's really a free agent. He's not a free agent, but he was a special team stud. He really came in and filled that void on Sunday and played really well. And he ended up getting with the interception that sealed the deal for the Raiders to pick up that victory against the Colts. So I'm expecting moving forward to see Carl Joseph and Eric Harris out there at the safety position just because he could play. I mean, he at least shows that he knows what he's doing. Where Curtis Riley, I don't know what planet he's on or what he's doing, but he's not playing good football. I mean, hell, I could probably burn him if I was out in the street or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's just he's bad. He's awful. I don't know. I mean, Giants fans were laughing when the Raiders signed him. Like, you just signed Curtis Riley? Are you sure? Do you know what you're in for? But whatever. It is what it is. I guess they had that Fresno State love because Derek Carr was a Fresno State guy and so was Curtis Riley. So maybe they were trying to, I don't know, make him feel good about his surroundings. I don't have any idea what the signing was for. It didn't make any sense to me, but it is what it is. The corners, Garyon Conley, he was a former first-round draft pick as well. He's expected to be the number one guy. I've never been a big fan of Garyon Conley. I just really don't. I don't know. I like him as far as his coverage skills, but he doesn't come up and make tackles. I like defensive backs that can come up and make tackles. Guys that can, mix it up, get their nose in there and bring you down if you get the catch. He misses a lot of tackles, but he performed well on Sunday. I don't know what the deal was, but he did perform well on Sunday. On the other side, opposite of him, you got Darryl Worley. I'm a little suspect on him, whatever. I'm interested and intrigued, and you can watch the game on Sunday and see if he gets into the game. Second-round draft pick out of Clemson, Trayvon Mullen. He's a defensive back. I like him a lot. He's number 27. Watch out for him. I want to see, and I'm interested in seeing if he gets on the field. He only played a couple of snaps against against Indianapolis. I'm interested to see if he gets onto the field. If he does, see what he does. Because I really like him. I like his swagger about himself. I like his little attitude where he feels like he can go make a play happen. If he doesn't, he has a short-term memory. He'll go back and get after it right away. I think he's going to be a really good defensive back moving forward, but he's still a rookie, so they're just kind of slowly working him in. But you watch out for number 27, Trayvon Mullen. I think he could have a big play or a big game if he gets some run on Sunday against the Bears.
I'll be honest, Q, you're making me feel pretty good about this Raiders secondary right now. My confidence is rising as you're talking about, well, maybe, and he stinks, and he's going to get burned. We're going right down the checklist of buzzwords that I like hearing about an opposing team. I got one more question for me before I turn it over to the fans in the chat room. We always talk about special teams on this show because it's a Bears podcast, and we're kind of obsessed with kicking it for some reason. I can't imagine why. But what is the state of the Raiders' third unit? Any notable guys that we should know about?
I think the special team unit is pretty good. I really do. Johnny Townsend was a fifth-round draft pick in 2018, and he stunk as a punter, and so the Raiders cut him. They just whatever. They cut him in training camp, and they turned the reins over to A.J. Cole, who's a undrafted free agent, and he's been really good. He's been able to flip the field and really set the Raiders up with nice kicks and long hang time, 5-second hang time, so they have an opportunity to get down the field and make a tackle. Rich Bisaccia is the special teams coach for the Raiders. He's one of the best in the business. He always has been. So the special teams unit has been really good as far as I'm concerned with the punt and punt coverage, even kickoff and kick return. They had Dwayne Harris, who's a wily old veteran. Rich Bisaccia knew him very well from his time in Dallas, but he has a high ankle sprain, so he's out. But Trevor Davis is a guy that you need to look out for. Trevor Davis is a guy that the Raiders went out and gave up a 6th-round draft pick to the Packers for, and all he does is run fast. He's got speed, and he got a little bit more speed. He's a guy that Al Davis would love. He's a guy that Al Davis probably would have drafted just because he's so fast. But he's a good kick returner, good punt returner, good special teams guy. He doesn't know the playbook very well yet as far as being a wide receiver, but you don't need to know the playbook when you're fast, right? You just give the ball to the guy and just tell him run. There's one thing you don't have to teach in the league, and that's speed. And he's got a lot of speed. You saw the game last week. He had an end-around play that went 60 yards for a touchdown, and he looked like he was gliding. Didn't even look like he was trying that hard. It's just that speed. He's got it. And again, you can't teach speed. And then he did it again, and the play was about to be blown up, and he reversed fields and went and got 15 more yards the other way in a first down. So he's got that. He's got that edge to him. He's really good at punt returning. He's really good at kick returning. So that's a special part of the Raiders team where they can set themselves up with good field position if you have to punt the ball to them, or if you're kicking off after a touchdown or to start the game, whatever it is, they can do that. So I believe that the special teams unit is pretty stinking good for the Raiders. But again, you got to kick the ball and you got to be in that kind of position to even take advantage of that.
Do you miss the swag of Marquette King at all?
Not really, but he had a hell of a leg. You know what I mean? He had a hell of a leg. I actually got a chance to talk to him over the summer during training camp, and I like to pick the brain of him because he's a different dude. There's certain guys that are football guys. There's certain guys like me that are real passionate and fired up about things. And then there's guys like Marquette King that just kind of do their own thing, but they're really good at it. And he's really, really good kicker. And he actually wanted to sit down and talk with Gruden and Mayock and all them, but I don't think they gave him that opportunity. But, that's one thing he could do. He sure could kick the ball, but when a punter's getting a 15-yard penalty, there's a problem there.
I would say so. Hey, Alyssa, I know you've been interacting with our fans over on the Mixlr chat room. Any questions for Q as we move forward?
Yes, I have 4 questions. Hello, Q. How you doing?
I'm chilling. How you doing?
Good. I got some questions for you here. So how do you think the Bears defense matches up with Gruden's offense?
Well, I think the Bears defense matches up with anybody. You know what I mean? The Bears defense is really stinking good. So I think that it's going to be a real tough chess match. I think that Gruden is going to try to scheme something up to get the ball out of Derek Carr's hands as quickly as possible before those goons that the Bears have on the ends, before they get after him and make his life a living hell. And I expect them to really get after him in a major way, especially Khalil Mack. He's going to want to put hands on his former buddy. And so, yeah, I think that Gruden's going to have to really scheme something up to get the ball out of his hand as quickly as possible. He's got to give a heavy dose of the run game, a lot of Josh Jacobs, a lot of DeAndre Washington. And, going to have to do some misdirection, going to have to do some end arounds. And the Bears, the one thing about them, man, they're disciplined. And I don't have to tell you guys that. They're disciplined. They know how to stay in their own lanes. They know how to read a play and see what's coming. And if someone's going out one way, something's coming back the other way. They know that. They're really good defense. What are they, top 5? They're top 5 for a reason. You know what I mean? They're really, really good. So it's going to be, I don't think John Gruden's getting any sleep while he's in London trying to figure out how he's going to try to match up against his Bears defense. But I would definitely say that the Bears defense is going to be okay. They're not going to really struggle too much because that's how good they are.
Who do you think Derek Carr's go-to target will be against the Bears?
I believe it'll be Darren Waller. Darren Waller, the tight end, who he's been basically his go-to guy so far this season. I think he has 33 catches on the year, and all he needed was one more catch in that last game to be the first tight end to get 34 catches in his first 4 games. But and actually beat Antonio Gates. He actually tied Antonio Gates. So that's pretty cool. But he's been a nice surprise. He really has. He's been picking up a lot of catches, and he's a real good athlete. He's just one of those tight ends in a wide receiver body. I like to call him Jimmy Graham before Jimmy Graham really kind of fell off. He's really that dude that can go up and high point a ball, and once he gets going, he's going to basically try to run through you. one of the things that Gruden's going to try to do is get him in comfortable situations. He's going to try to match him up against linebackers. He's going to try to match him up against the smaller defensive backs. He's going to try to, get him mismatched so he can be in a comfortable situation where he can catch the ball and get those yards after the catch, because that's what Gruden's offense is all about. It's about those yak yards. Catch the ball and go. And so that's what's going to be interesting, is how do the Bears navigate that? How do they shut that down? Are they going to try to be aggressive and jump some routes? Because, look, they got some ball hawks on that defense. So are they going to do that? Are they going to try to play back and come up and make the tackle? That's going to be interesting to see what they choose to do.
So the Bears and the Raiders are taking things overseas. So the Bears aren't headed to London until Thursday. Is there an added advantage for the Raiders who are already in London?
I think so. Absolutely. And I'm glad you told me that if it was going to be Thursday, because I heard a report like they weren't going to get there till Friday. So maybe that's the case. They're not getting there till Friday since it's 15-hour flight or whatever. So last year, the Raiders took off later in the week, and Seattle, they mollywopped them. They gave them the business. They ran them out the stadium. It was terrible. And Seattle had got there early in the week. And so they said that they had learned from the last time they played there that you got to get there early and let your body get your mind right, get your body right, get the clock right, be able to figure out exactly what's going on while you're there. And the Raiders didn't do that. So I appreciated the fact that they boarded the plane from Indianapolis and went immediately to London. So by the time the game comes on Sunday, they should be seasoned veterans, right? They should already be ready to go. I'm interested to see how that shift it messes with the Bears, or if it messes with the Bears, if that even makes a difference. If it does, then there's something to that. If it doesn't, then, well, maybe Seattle just didn't know what they were talking about, and maybe the Raiders league getting there late last week or last year was okay. But I do think it's going to affect the Bears getting there late. I think they should already be there. And
so I have one last question for you before we send you off. How many times do you think Khalil Mack gets after his old friend Derek Carr?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, man, that's a great question. He's probably going to be lined up against Colton Miller, the second-year guy out of UCLA, a bunch. So there's a good opportunity for him to get there. I mean, he's going to get doubled. He's going to get tripled. Us Raider fans know that very well. He gets held all the time, and I don't know if he gets calls now in Chicago, but he never got the holding calls called against him, in Oakland. He never, ever, when guys would just literally choke him out, they still would never call a holding on him. I'm sure he probably gets a little bit more love now, but that dude's such a monster. I expect him to live in the backfield of the Raiders, and he's going to want to get after Derek Carr because they're so competitive and they're good friends. Like you mentioned, they used to play hoops in the swimming pool at Derek Carr's house all the time, and they're good buddies. So I could definitely see him wanting to put a bruising on Derek Carr and hit him, not hurt him, but definitely hit him early and often, and kind of send a message to John Gruden like, yeah, I should still be here. But he's probably going to live in the backfield. I just expect Derek Carr to try to get rid of that ball so Mr. Mack does not hit him too often.
Q, I want to thank you so much for your time. Before we cut you loose, can you please tell our audience where they can find your work, listen to your work, read your work, and how they can interact with you on social media?
Yeah, no doubt about that, man. On Twitter, you can always find me at your boy Q254. That's at your boy Q254. That's really the only social media I have. That's really all I really need. If anything else, I'll probably get myself in trouble. So I don't do that. But ESPN Central Texas, Monday through Friday, I do a show, Unnecessary Roughness, from 12 to 3 Central Time. A lot of fun there, doing just about everything. And then I have the Locked On Raiders podcast that you guys have mentioned. I put that out on a daily, usually about 9 a.m. Central Time. It's up every single day. I also do the Black Hole Banter podcast with my man James Arcelana. And then again, like I said, you can always interact with me on Twitter at your boy Q254. And I'm wherever you want me to be. That's who I am. I'm the guy that never stops working.
Your boy Q, host of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Q, thank you so much. A lot of great information there. I feel like we know the Raiders a lot better than we did just a couple minutes ago. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you down the line.
All right. I appreciate you guys having me. Whenever you're ready, man, you call me. I got you.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
hey, take care, buddy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alec Lifshos, a.k.a. Trey Busy, and I'm here to have a conversation with you guys about mental health. A lot of times in our communities, we don't talk about mental health enough, and it goes under the radar as a reoccurring issue. So I took the liberty to create the Let's Talk It Out podcast. This podcast was created to break the silence on mental health issues and to give a voice to those suffering. I have conversations with professionals in the mental health field as well as those who are suffering, and we break down different ways to stump stigmas and ways to cope with mental health conditions. The show is broadcasted live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on Mixlr.com/LTIO podcast. That's MIXLR.com/LTIO podcast. if you can't make the live recording of the podcast, then you can find the podcast available to you on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Give the podcast a follow on Twitter and Instagram at LTI Podcast on both platforms. Thank you, and I look forward to talking to you guys in the future.
All right, Alyssa, let's do it.
So, John, that music signifies one thing. It is time for the second half of our B55 questions. I don't know about you, but after that conversation, I'm feeling, pretty good about Sunday.
You know what? I got to call Q a little bit, a couple more times just to make me feel better about the Bears.
Exactly. It's good pick me up right there.
It was.
So, let's get right to our next set of questions. And while we traditionally do 5, I'd like to go to OT here, so be prepared.
All right.
So first, I'd like your thoughts on the whole idea of the Bears playing in London, and for that matter, any regular season games held internationally. Good idea? Bad idea? The clock is at 0 and ready to roll once you're ready to rock.
I have almost an indifferent feeling towards this. I used to push back on this a little bit. Now it's not going anywhere, and I've kind of had to accept it. I get that it's a fun event for those in London, and it gives a taste of American football to Europe. But what is the end game here? When this started, the speculation was that this was paving a way for a team in the UK, and there's still rumors that could happen sometime in like 2025 or something like that. I don't know if that'll ultimately happen for a number of reasons. One being the time difference. If a team is fully stationed in London, eventually they're going to have to play a bunch of AFC and NFC West teams. That's an 8-hour time difference. I don't know if all the teams are going to love that. Also, there's a chance that the once or twice a year luster of the NFL wears off once it becomes the norm. I could reference the now defunct NFL Europe, which was losing about $30 million towards the end of its tenure, but that's not entirely fair either because there was a lack of name recognition in that league. But it is possible that the novelty of the NFL could fade if a team is permanently put there. They could find some new consumers overseas like the NBA and the MLB have been able to do with international players. The NFL doesn't have as many international players, so the next best thing is just putting a team there, I guess.
I'm like you. I'm kind of indifferent to the idea, but like the one issue that I normally have was these games would be on at 9, but this game is on at noon.
Yeah, I mean, if they cater it to the American time, I guess that it wouldn't be too much of an issue. Same time. Now they used to do that at 9 o'clock, which was like I got to roll out of bed, and I guess if you're on the West Coast, you'd be watching it at 6 a.m. So I that was a little bit of an issue.
I'm just thankful the Bears don't have to give up a home game for this.
Yeah, me too. That was the biggest thing. That's their away game. They're just having to travel across the pond, if you will.
So when the Bears do take on the Raiders across the pond on Sunday, Trubisky might miss that game. It's looking like that's most likely going to happen. Who do you think needs to step up to help alleviate the loss of their starting quarterback, other than, of course, Chase Daniel? You got 55 ticks.
Well, I think they need to have the ability to run the ball down a team's throat and control the clock. Chase did a good job at extending drives and, giving the defense a rest, and that's going to be crucial moving forward. But a healthy run game is certainly going to bolster a lot of things. David Montgomery, 21 carries versus the Vikings, the most he's had this season. I think we see that workload increase a little bit. This is probably the point of the season where the Bears feel comfortable making him the workhorse, and they're going to see if he can control the game. I imagine a 25-carry day for David Montgomery. Also, the offensive line did a good job at keeping Chase Daniel upright. Only 1 sack, and that definitely needs to continue. Chase under duress isn't going to play out well for anyone. So give Chase a chance to scan the field, see his options, and fire away. I'm not worried about the defense stepping up, but on the offensive side of the ball, I think the line and the running game really need to perform well, be it Montgomery or, some side-to-side stuff with Cordero Patterson or Tariq Cohen. They need to be Chase Daniel's best friend moving forward.
I definitely think this is the best game that the Bears offensive line had in terms of pass blocking.
Yeah, and I don't know why, because it's not like Chase Daniels is crazy elusive. They just played better.
But like you said, they need to get that run game going. I feel like this could be the week.
I think they're going to try to give a big, heavy workload to David Montgomery, because when we saw Chase struggle against the Giants, he did throw the ball 39 times.
And speaking of that Giants game, which I was at, and I still have horrible memories of it, there are no gimmies in the NFL. So what concerns you about the next game the Bears play when they play the Raiders in London? 55 seconds. Go ahead.
By no means should Chase Daniels be carrying this team on his back or everyone is going to faceplant. We know what happened against the Giants last year. Chase looked good at points last year, and then against the Giants, he looked like the guy in the preseason that made everybody want to run him out of town. I'm concerned because if he has one of those games, the Bears are going to fall into a sloppy, clumsy game with the Raiders, and that's something I'm sure the Raiders would welcome. I would love for the Bears to be able to play with a lead early, give a little room for error, but if it's 3-0 or 10-6 late in the game, then all bets are off, because then it only takes one play to turn the game upside down. I'm kind of afraid of bad turnovers. That's what keeps inferior teams in games. When a better team turns it over, it gives a short field to the opposing offense, and all of a sudden, you're playing catch-up to a team you probably should be beating by 10 in an atmosphere that's completely out of your element in the United Kingdom.
And I think that this defense has shown that they just need the quarterback to just do enough and just not make mistakes.
Yeah, Chase does not need to win the game. The defense can win the game. The Bears can control the clock, have some sustaining drives, put up enough points. As we see, even 16 is basically enough.
And it worked against the Vikings, so it should work against the Raiders.
I would imagine. Let's
hope. So, John, as of today, we still have not learned why Roquan Smith missed the game against the Vikings. And according to Coach Matt Nagy, he may not play against the Raiders. What's your take on the mystery surrounding this issue? The clock starts now.
One thing I've learned throughout my years, do not speculate on personal issues, because 99% of the time you are either wrong, you come off as ignorant, or you just look like a jackass. Wild speculation got thrown out on social media immediately, from DUIs to, a mental illness issue to whatever else. People get antsy because you can't diagnose a personal issue right away. There's no x-ray for that. There's no MRI to properly figure out a personal issue. So naturally, pundits and fans will just start throwing wild, unsourced crap against the wall and then running with it. It's a personal issue, and that's all I need to know. If a personal issue can sideline a guy like Roquan Smith, then it's serious. I don't need to give my opinion on how to fix it. I'm not going to act like I have the knowledge to fix it. I'm sorry I'm not burning down the house with any scorching hot takes here, but we are talking about a human being. This isn't a fictional soap opera where fans get to speculate on why a person was absent like it was some weird plot twist that will come full circle in the season finale. We're talking about a guy with a problem, so let's leave it at that.
It is time for the Buffone Boost. So last year, Chase Daniels stepped in for an injured Mitch Trubisky and delivered a performance worthy of our respect. That was the Thanksgiving game against the Lions. Chase was 22 for 37 for 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. But the following week, as we discussed against the Giants, he was unable to get the job done, throwing 2 interceptions in a heartbreaking 30-27 loss. So give Chase the words he needs to hear to ensure that he doesn't follow up a performance worthy of our praise with a game full of gifts. Go ahead, John. The clock is off. Take it away.
William Chase Daniel. Here we are. Once again, you are being asked to step in for an injured Mitchell Trubisky and man the wheel of a contender. Chase, you've been in this league for 10 years. No one's really concerned about you having the mental capacity to play in the NFL. You had a hell of a performance last week. You had no inclination that you'd play. You just got thrown in there, and you played well. You played very well. That's what you need to do this week. I know things got a little hairy last year against the Giants, but like we said, you were asked to throw the ball 39 times. I don't think that will be expected of you this week. Just go out there and play ball. Snap and react. You got a world-class defense behind you and an array of playmakers on offense. Don't be a hero, be a facilitator, and everything will be just fine. All right, every week I give you my prediction of the game. So far, I'm 3-1, just like the Bears. I think the defense keeps rolling. I think they create 2 turnovers against the Raiders, create some short fields, and come up with a solid but not overpowering win. I think they leave London with a 17-12 victory over the Raiders. Why 12? I think the Raiders will be going for a 2-point conversion late in this game, and they'll miss it, much like we saw in the Minnesota game. Before we get out of here, I want to thank your boy Q, host of the Locked On Raiders podcast, for being my guest tonight. He was excellent. Remember to follow me on Twitter at JD Buffone, and make sure you are following the Bar Room on Twitter at Bears Bar Room, and on the Facebook page as well. Alyssa, tell our listeners where they can find your work and contact you on social media.
You can find my work over at bearswire.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Alyssa Barbieri. I also want to tell those listening to us live on Mixler.com that in just a few minutes, we've got 2 more shows coming up. Fantasy Football Goon with Joe Mandel, who is also known as Joey Two Scoops, and John Santucci, a.k.a. The Tooch. They will welcome fantasy football legend Spaceball, and the 3 will get you prepped for Week 2. That's followed by Shy Fans in the Stands with Greg Braggs and Joey Two Scoops. Those 2 shows, along with this one, will be available on podcast format. So make sure you subscribe to the Bears Barroom Radio Network.
That's right, and sign up on our Mixler.com for email and updates on all of our live shows. We'd love to have you in our chat rooms. It's all absolutely free to sign up for. We hope you would join us live and interact with us. And if you listen to the podcast version, please leave us a review. That helps us out immensely. But that'll do it for us tonight on Buffone 55. We'll see you next week, Barflies.